Hey everybody, and welcome to this exclusive passive webinar where we'll be discussing the pension regulator's new data quality guidance and PASA's work to support this. My name is Amanda Asante and I'm a non-executive director of PASA, a trustee director and head of administration for Independence Governance Group. I'm delighted to be chairing this webinar today, and I'm joined by my colleagues Yo-Yo, policy delivery lead at the pensions regulator, and Christy Cotton, director at PwC and chair of the data working group for PASA. This webinar is hot off the press as the pensions regulator published their revised member data guidance just yesterday, where they urge trustees to treat data as a strategic asset. At PASA, we understand that good quality data underpins good administration. Our data working groups have already published several helpful guides on topics such as the use of AI in administration, buying guidance, and protecting member data to secure tomorrow. PASA welcomes the regulator's updated guidance in this area, bringing data once again to the forefront of trustees' thoughts, and not just as something to think about when considering an endgame strategy or a specific project, but something that should be part of the day-to-day life of a pension scheme, an ongoing discussion with your administrator and a continuous exercise. Since the introduction of the data guidance nearly 10 years ago, pension schemes have been working hard to improve the quality of their data. This work has been accelerated over recent years thanks to initiatives such as dashboards and as more schemes consider endgame solutions. However, there is still much work to do. Trustees have a duty to pay the correct benefits at the correct time, and this is only possible with good quality and accurate data. When considering the risks that are associated with running your pension schemes, ask yourself, how often do you think about data risk? What is your strategy to mitigate this risk? And what is your strategy to ensure that data, which is ever changing, remains accurate, current, and relevant? I'm going to hand over to Yo-Yo and Christy, who are going to take you through the updates and what this means in practice for trustees and schemes. Please do send your questions through in the Q&A facility. We're expecting to talk for about 35 minutes, and we'll try and cover as many of the questions as we can at the end of the session. But otherwise, Yo-Yo and Christy, over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Good morning, everyone. I'm Yo-Yo, Policy Delivery Lead at the Pensions Regulator. Today, I will walk you through the latest update to our guidance on member data quality, which was, as Amanda just mentioned, which was published yesterday. So member data is a strategic asset. Good data quality underpins everything, from paying the right benefit at the right time to meet legal obligations and delivering a positive member experience. Poor data can lead into costly errors, regulatory risk, and reputational damage. But before taking you through the details of our guidance, I want to share some insights that we observed through the regulatory work on the data quality that was launched last October and throughout the last year. So can you move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So we concerned that scheme without basic data control in place would struggle more than others to comply with their data dashboards duties. So we use the data scores that's submitted to us via scheme return as risk indicators to identify the schemes that may not meet our expectations. These are the schemes that never or not frequently submit either or both common and scheme-specific data scores to us, or schemes reported 100% complete and accurate data score, which is unusual and could indicate that the tests were not very robust, or the data score that is relatively low to the other schemes, which likely need to improve their data. We have also engaged with a sample of random schemes that do not necessarily have these risk indicators, so we could understand the general data measurement practice across the industry and identify the good practice as well. So we challenged these schemes to demonstrate how they identify, review, and measure and improve their data, and encourage schemes to review and improve their data quality where they haven't done enough. We've engaged with over 1,000 schemes via different routes, including detailed engagements with over 200 schemes. We've seen some recurring themes, which I have listed them on the screen for you to read. We noticed that while schemes generally able to provide us with their data scores when we request, the robustness of those measurements varies. Many schemes rely on standard tests provided by their TPAs or their software providers, which checks for presence and some basic consistency. But is this insufficient for your schemes in your scheme's specific situations? Do you know that the data items that have been, what data items has been measured, what test has been done? And do you know that is that truly accurate of your data? We saw some schemes even have two sets of data score, one called data score and one called TPR scores. Do you know what's the difference between those two scores? We do not expecting to see reports with two different scores. We urge schemes to report the score in the scheme return that giving the schemes the most accurate pictures of your data quality. We observe widespread of data cleansing and data improvement activities. However, many of them remain driven by specific project requirements, such as GMP work or preparation for dashboards. However, does this improvement plan meet the scheme's overarching needs from holistic view? We also see many improvement plans tend to be informal and fragmented. Some schemes only had very vague timescales without clear governance around the improvement works. So we also have published a report yesterday with full details of each of those insights that we observed that putting on the screen. And our guidance has been updated following to these learnings to provide a further clarification of our expectations in these inconsistent areas, as well as providing good practice and practical examples to assist the schemes better managing the member data. So what's the key update in our guidance? Next slide, please. First, defining data. So for common data, the key update is about the contact details. We expecting schemes to hold a form of contact data for member, whether it is personal email address, personal mobile phone number, or home address. So not just the postal address as we in our previous guidance. For scheme-specific data, although we acknowledge that the required data items were naturally very dependent on the scheme's benefit type provided, member status, applicable legislations, or and the strategic objectives of each scheme. At a minimum, the data needs to cover the data items that the schemes need to calculate pension values, process member queries and events, and any specific features of the scheme, such as if the scheme has contracting out or remediation exercise that's needed. When assessing the quality of data, ensuring data is assessed from multiple dimensions to ensure that it's of sufficient quality and determine if improvements are needed. Government recommends to looking at the quality of data from 6 core characters as defined by the Data Management Association UK. It's good practice to ensure your member data has been assessed against these data dimensions, which are complete, accurate, valid, consistent, and timely, and where appropriate, unique. We have provided some examples of how data can be assessed against those dimensions, and the PASA Data Working Group has also produced further practical considerations in this area, which Christy will cover a little bit later. We have also clarified that, as a minimum, trustees should review a data quality report at least once a year, which includes a data score for your common and scheme-specific data. The report should also contain sufficient contextual information for trustees and the scheme managers to understand what does that mean for the scheme and if there are any actions required. The guidance has also provided more examples on how schemes should calculate their data scores, so please do read our guidance for those examples. Where improvement work is required, there should be a clear record of the plan. Better to be a stand-alone document so that the trustees can refer to it easily. It also should be tailored to your scheme's need with clear objectives, outcome, timelines, and roles. PASA Data Working Group has also produced a template of this plan, which Christy will also cover in her session. But data management is not just a one-off exercise, it's ongoing process. So what do we expect in trustee and scheme managers to do to maintain the data good quality? Next slide, please. Thank you. So first, member data is a strategic asset. Trustee and scheme managers should think of member data according to the scheme strategy and develop the data strategy with a broad and future-proofing view. It helps trustees to make informed decisions and ensure they're continuously complying with the regulatory requirements. Change continues to happen, so not just the regulatory requirements, but also the wider economic environment. All these changes challenge your scheme data. It's good practice to formally capture the strategic approach to member data in a data management strategy, sometimes known as a data management plan, that sets out key data considerations for your scheme and documents the key governance, the data governance processes that your schemes have. If it's not written down, it probably doesn't exist, so make sure you have those documented. Scheme and trustees and scheme managers must take an active role in data management. Specifically, ensure that the administrators have adequate controls and processes in place to maintain good quality data. Obtain regular data reports from your administrator and challenge them on data risk and issues. You need to reflect the data quality on your risk register where appropriate, and consider data quality regularly at the board meetings. Make relevant decisions promptly and effectively that are required by the administrator, and ensure that sufficient resource and budget is allocated appropriately to resolve any data issues as they arise. As I just mentioned, that the good quality data means the data is complete in a valid format, consistent with other data, timely, accurate, and where appropriate, unique. So asking your administrator whether the member data is assessing from those multiple dimensions. Most schemes will need to carry out a data review at least once a year to make sure that their member data stay high quality. Larger schemes and those with a complex benefit structures may need to review the member data more often, such as quarterly or even monthly. There are many other ways to enable scheme maintain good quality data on an ongoing basis. We talked about data management policy, but also hold your third-party providers to account via a robust contract, proactively engage with all relevant data providers, such as employers or even your members themselves. And don't fear technology, use it. Automation can transform data cleansing. APIs can streamline data sharing. But remember, technology is a tool, not a substitute for governance, and you will need good data to truly benefit from technology. Also, thinking about the data security when you are implementing any system or technologies around your data. So good data quality, as we said, is essential for member outcome and scheme governance. Can we move into the next slides, please? Thank you. As a TPR, we are continuing engaging with the schemes on dashboard preparation and data quality management. So expecting more scrutiny from us in this area. Earlier July this year, we launched a deep dive exercise into data control and dashboard data preparation for the largest 51 schemes in the UK. This is covering across master trust, PSPS schemes, largest DB schemes, and this work is still continuing at the moment. We are also actively engaged with professional trustee firms to understand and support wider landscape. Further work looking into dashboards data preparation of the wider universe of scheme setting scope for dashboards is being defined for launch in 2026. So our message is clear. Be ready to demonstrate how you maintain your member data in line with legal requirements and our expectations. Schemes unable to demonstrate compliance may face formal intervention from us. Review your current approach, challenge your administrators, and make sure your improvement plan and data management strategies are fit for purpose. Understand your data, identifying gaps, putting robust plan in place, and reviewing data regularly. I'm now handing over to Christy to talk about the products that PASA Data Working Group provided to support you in this area in more details. Thank you.
Great, and thank you, Yo-Yo, and good morning, everyone. So firstly, as chair of the PASA Data Working Group, I'd like to reiterate Amanda's opening message that this regulatory update on data quality is very much supported by us here at PASA and is a welcome step in really formalising the now long-standing messaging from the regulator and us at PASA about that real importance and therefore requirements of data quality for pensions. So I've been working closely with the pensions regulator and other industry experts for a number of years now in my role as chair of the data working group. And in bringing this updated regulatory guidance to the industry, it is great to see that the banging of that data drum for so long has really started to bring out some success stories and showcase that data doesn't need to hold this industry back, and we don't need to and shouldn't settle for bad or good enough data. So I wanted to start by giving a quick recap on the PASA Data Working Group, who we are and what we're doing to support the industry. So the PASA Data Working Group comprises of industry data and administration specialists, and we've been providing practical guidance and insights to the UK pensions industry for over 6 years now. Our primary purpose is to drive up data and administration standards across the pensions sector, but underlined by a focus on ensuring that our scheme members receive better outcomes through that improved data quality and governance. This means we work really closely with the pensions regulator as an industry voice in both directions, so supporting TPR in what their regulatory landscape is around data, but also supporting you in the industry to meet those requirements. Over the years, we've developed lots of comprehensive guidance to support pension schemes in managing data effectively. And our publications address critical areas of data management, and we've received lots of really great feedback from the industry about how informative and helpful our guidance has been over the years. And it's become an essential resource for trustees, administrators, and service providers, which is really great. So I wanted to highlight some of the key pieces we released over the last couple of years and remind you all to familiarise yourself with them and continue to refer to them in running schemes. So firstly, data management plan, and Yo-Yo referred to this. This is a guide to really help schemes get to grips with what their data management strategy is, how they're running their schemes, the governance requirements, the frameworks around what they need to really have a control over their data. So again, strong encouragement to all schemes to understand that guidance, refer to it and use it in implementing your data strategy and plan. We've released then second some guidance around data management and control. So this is around, yes, we've got good data, but how do we manage that? How do we manage new data coming in? How do we implement controls within the operations to ensure that we have good data and we continue to have good data? Secondly, it was around data readiness for buy-in to buyout, and we've released 2 detailed guidance supporting this de-risking journey. So any schemes that are looking at going towards a risk transfer, please do refer to that guidance. It gives great information about the data needs, the requirements, and how to manage data effectively as part of de-risking journeys. Then we've released some really great guidance on supporting dashboards readiness, particularly around accuracy. And this piece really focuses on just how important accurate data is around finding members and matching them to their pension pots. It gives some really good practical guidance around the resources that are out there to move from presence analysis to accuracy in using those resources. End of last year, we released some guidance around data scoring, which was working alongside the regulator to understand that how can we make sure that data scoring is more consistent across the industry and really is putting in some robust testing such that it's giving a true reflection of data quality. So that's received some great feedback, and I know is really looking at driving improved analysis around measurement of data. Then very recently, we've released 2 key pieces. So one looking at security of data, protecting that member data, and particularly in the evolving landscape around technology. And then around data for AI. AI is a hot topic, there's lots of opportunities, and that guidance really is about being curious and adopting AI, but with caution and making sure it's right for the scheme and the members. So I'm excited to announce today that in support of updated TPR guidance published yesterday, PASA is launching 2 comprehensive guidance documents, and those will be released immediately after this webinar closes. So on to the next page. We are releasing 2 guidances today, but there will be a 3rd release, which will come out very shortly, and that is around updating our data scoring guidance that we released last year, and that's just to formalise the link to the regulatory guidance that was published yesterday. So the first publication that we're releasing today explores the 6 critical dimensions of defining data quality in pension schemes, as Yo-Yo referred to. And understanding and applying these dimensions enables trustees and administrators to systematically assess and improve their data standards, ensuring that accurate member records and therefore reliable administration is in place. TPR's guidance signposts the schemes to assess quality of data against these 6 key dimensions, and the PASA guidance we're publishing today provides more practical information and examples on how these 6 dimensions impact quality of pensions data. So firstly, we look at accuracy. This is a really important term when we come to look at data for pensions, and it refers to the extent to which data correctly reflects real-world values or facts. So in pension schemes, accuracy means that member records such as names, addresses, date of birth, national insurance numbers, and accrued benefits exactly match their actual characteristics. Accuracy in this context is vital because any discrepancies could lead to incorrect pensions, it could lead to having the wrong members and matching members against wrong benefits. And that does affect both the member and the scheme provider. And actually having accuracy in your data really helps in maintaining trust and satisfaction amongst our members. So examples here, an example would be an incorrect date of birth may result in members receiving benefits earlier or later than they're entitled to, which could impact not only when the member makes the right decision around their benefits, but also the scheme funding. Secondly, we look at completeness, and that's about having all required data available and filled out without any omissions. So for pension schemes, this means that we have all the necessary information regarding members' personal details, their employment history, the contributions they've made to the scheme, and any required data, and that's fully available and documented. Incomplete data can lead to errors in your administration and incorrect pension benefits. So some examples here. Missing employment end dates could prevent the accurate calculation of deferred benefits or eligibility for retirement. Or not having the full marital status could mean that survivor benefit entitlements aren't correct and could lead to underpayments or disputes around those benefits. Thirdly, looking at consistency. This involves ensuring uniformity in data over time and across different data sets and systems. I think that's a really important area to consider for pensions. So in pension schemes, consistent data helps to avoid discrepancies between various records, such as contribution histories, status, entitlement. And it also means that the sources don't contradict themselves. So if members are seeing different information, this could become a live scenario on online platforms for schemes and then on dashboards or their annual benefit statements, that could be really misleading to members. So consistency is really crucial for maintaining that member trust and operational efficiency. Timeliness. So this is about how promptly data is captured and made available for use. Now for pension schemes, timely data collection ensures that member records are updated swiftly following any changes, such as salary adjustments, which can have a real impact on members' benefits. Employment status can also be really important. We need to know about that information up front. We also have address information. It's important that we know when people have changed so we can contact them. So timeliness of those data changes is really important. Next, we look at uniqueness. Now, this means no replication or duplication within data sets. And in the context of pension schemes, uniqueness protects against duplicate records or data that's misleading and means that members receive benefits when they're not due them. This could lead to calculation inaccuracies or, of course, data security issues. So some examples here is that a duplicate member record could have a name of John Smith, but it could also there as Jonathan Smith, and we end up with 2 records for the same person, double counting or actually missing communications. Multiple pension accounts for the same member may not have the right proper linking across them and could cause fragmented benefit calculations. And duplication in salary information could mean that gets counted twice, and there's an increase in benefits when there shouldn't be. Validity. Now, this assesses whether data confirms to defined formats or requirements. And this is something that I do see pension schemes look at. So do we have, for pension schemes, data validity means that entries are structurally correct. So national insurance numbers meet the requirements, date of birth are in the right format, contribution amounts meet required range limits around what could be contributed. Validity minimises the risk of errors in processing, and it does help to ensure that data adheres to operational and organisational policies. So example here could be that if you had dates in the UK format or American format, that could create quite different requirements around when benefits are paid. Contributions also outside of expected ranges could mean that there are data entry errors or even fraud detection. So all of this is around making sure that we look at data across all of those 6 dimensions to get a true picture, not just is it present, but is it genuinely the data that we need to hold. So it's really important, and do refer to that guidance when it comes out. Now on to the next page, the second publication today, I think it's a really important one for the industry and starts to really think about what we've just heard from Yo-Yo around an area that TPR are seeing that isn't up to scratch and it's missing fundamental information. And that is around the data improvement plans that are put in place for schemes. So we are launching a template data improvement plan that will support the industry in having a plan that sets out all of the required areas to enable it to be successful. This is a practical tool that provides a structured approach to identifying, prioritising and addressing data quality issues in a really systematic way. There's a couple of dimensions to this data quality, to this data improvement plan that we're releasing today. So firstly, there will be a front page, and this talks about the kind of strategic overview. So what are your objectives and what is the outcome you're trying to achieve from your data improvement plan? And setting that up front will really help to define whether you are successful in improving your data. What is the scope? What are the boundaries and the areas of focus? What does it mean and what you're actually doing as part of this plan? What are the dependencies? And this is really important. Is there an order in which you need to do this? Is there a dependency around new data coming in or different providers that you need to be aware of in managing your timescales? On to timescales. What are they? Are they realistic and how can they be achieved? It's important, as we said, timeliness is really important for data quality. So we need to improve data quickly, but in a way that we can meet those timeframes and stick to them. And then it should also set out any other documentation that's really important when you're looking at data improvement. Secondly, there is a separate kind of clear area for roles and responsibilities. It's important that your data improvement plan has an ownership, and we know the trustee is responsible for that, but there are also wider governance and governing bodies and joint working groups that are really driving this data improvement plan. Your administrator will have a really key role to play in the data improvement and also onboarding of that new data. So who is your administrator and what is their role in part of this? But equally, who are your other providers? Who is actually supporting you in collecting this data, improving the data? Which providers are enabling the technology to do that? And how are you working with those? Who is your project manager? I expect most large-scale data improvement plans would have somebody that's responsible for making sure this plan is met and that those timescales are understood and that the stakeholders are working towards the plans. And very importantly, resources. A fundamental reason why a lot of these improvement plans fall down is because the resources to do that work hasn't been lined up, hasn't been clearly understood, and the dependencies across those mean that the resources isn't available in the timeframes initially planned. So who are the resources? What is the capability and the capacity for the work they need to do? What specialist resource are you using, and how does that fit into the plan? Then we're releasing an Excel-based template that enables you to have a good project plan and set out your data improvement requirements. So this is a structured approach to tracking the tasks, the milestones, the dates, and of course the status as you're working through that, understanding who the owners and the stakeholders are and where the dependencies come in around having a good plan. There is then a separate tab on here around what are your data requirements? What have you found? How many records are impacted? How many members? Because that could be different. What is the impact assessment and the risk levels around that, and what actions are being taken? And this could include setting out options for actions and then what decisions have been made around how to do that. The importance here is really understanding what the issues are, the size of those issues, the impact to the scheme, and if there's any wider issues that mean that things such as the BAU process need to be adapted to stop that issue becoming another issue again in the future. As I said, this is an Excel-based example with a Gantt chart and monitoring indicators. It also includes around the risk level assessment and how to identify and the wider understandings of data and the priorities. But it is to really highlight, this is a template, an example to really help schemes bring together what is required here. But it definitely will need schemes to understand the scheme specific requirements and put in what is important for that scheme to have that as a really good plan for you. So it's been really great to be able to release these alongside the updated regulatory guidance in such a timely manner so that schemes can have practical support straight away. Back to you, Amanda.
Thanks very much, Chrissy, and thank you, Yo-Yo, as well, for that very thought-provoking conversation. To conclude, before we move on to the questions and answers, I thought I'd put my trustee hat on and just build on Chrissy's commentary around, what all this means in practicality. What should trustees be doing? As I mentioned at the outset, trustees have a responsibility to pay the right benefits to the right people at the right time, and this isn't something that you can delegate. This is your responsibility as trustee, and having accurate data is the only way that you're going to achieve this. Good quality data underpins this and should not be relegated to an afterthought or a consideration only when a project comes up or an item that's late on the agenda and can be skipped if other areas overrun. Where should trustees start? Trustees need to start engaging with their administrators. When you go out and you speak to the administrators are crying out for trustees to engage with them, to speak to them, to start having that conversation, to give the administrators a seat around the table. Start developing your data strategy and start putting in place those journey plans. Every journey starts with the first step. Use the tools that PASA have put out for us and really just start taking data seriously. Invite your administrator to the table, include them in scheme journey planning discussions, include them in strategic discussions. If you're talking about endgame, make sure your administrator is there to talk about, well, actually, do we have the data to do this? Can we consider it? Make sure that they're there from the outset and not as an afterthought once you've decided on the direction of travel. Talk to your sponsors. Talk to the sponsors about the cost of data management, but not just the cost of fixing the data, but the risk and the costs associated with not investing in data and with not fixing data in this area. Data is going to become more and more relevant as we move into the modern technological world. With dashboards, apps, modelers, AI all looming, member access to data is going to become faster, more immediate and more automated. And to Yo-Yo's point, technology is a tool, it's not a replacement for good governance and good data. The risk to the trustee if you haven't taken time to ensure your data is accurate is significant. As you consider implementing some of these new technological solutions across your portfolio, stop and think. What data is this going to use? When was the last time we checked this data? How confident am I in the data the members will be accessing? The trustees to start thinking about the administration strategy in the same way as they think about funding and investment strategy. Ask yourselves, how does data feature? And as I mentioned at the start, make sure your administrator has a seat around the table. Utilising the tools that PASA have put out is an absolutely great place to start. Think about data as a BAU activity and not something you only consider as a specific project or once a year when the scheme return is due. Data in the pension world is not stagnant. It moves and it changes as people move through their life, and therefore it's important that you engage with your administrator and keep that strategy accurate. I'll leave you with a passing thought of, most of us do data checks in terms of what's there and what's there. We get these reports from our administrators, we look at them and we think, great, we can tick that box. How often do you ask yourself, and so what? What is in this data? What am I doing with it? What do I need to do next? And I think that is what the regulator is asking us to do. I'm going to move on, if that's okay, to questions and answers. We've had a fair few come through, and apologies while I flip between technologies to read these out. Yo-Yo, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. We've had a question come in that says, data thresholds as measurable values or percentages for recommending a go decision on DAP to DWP. Should there be minimal quality thresholds be shared amongst schemes to ensure everyone aims to meet at least some clear minimal requirements, if not exceed them?
Thank you, Amanda. I think this is a really good question. I think there are almost two levels of questions here. One is minimum level, and one is about, you know, what does it mean for dashboards ready. First, what is minimum requirements? As you know, that we as a TPR, we haven't really setting out a minimum requirement. This is, but it's always a good question. What good is good, and what is enough? All this, I would say that it's really dependent on the scheme. As we said, it's really depends on the scheme situations, where we notice that we're aware that some schemes may inherited the data quality issues from historic issues, that they may not have you know, good data scores. And then is that saying that they're not reaching the minimum? Not necessarily. If the schemes has already aware of it, putting a robust improvement plan with it, and working with it. As we know that it takes time for the data improve as well, especially when it's coming with the personal data. So really here, that's what we're calling out on the actions is for the schemes. Know your data, know the true quality of your data, know where the gap is, and put a robust improvement plan in place so you can measure your data has been improved and working towards good quality. If your schemes, you know, you're aware your scheme, some of the data is not of good quality. In terms of what it means for dashboard ready, this is an active area that we are looking. That's why we engage with the largest 51 schemes in the UK to understand their dashboard preparations, to understand what is the good practice, what is the work. And as you know, that dashboard current now has already kicked off the user testing process, and this will feature into that consideration as well. What does it mean for dashboards ready is when the DAP announced, it depends on the users whether they will have, you know, good user experience. So it's not just on the data quality, but also around what the users would see. Do they understand it? Is there any follow-on actions that after they're reviewing the dashboard? So there is a rounded considerations. This is active area we are looking on, and what I can say is, as a TPR, we are actively reviewing our guidance, both on the data quality guidance and dashboard guidance. So where we see the opportunities, see those good practice, and where we see the areas that we need raising the standards, we will updating our guidance to be clear on our expectations. So do keep, you know, updated with what we published, and then we were sharing what we saw with the industry to assist the schemes in this.
Fantastic. So watch this space. Brilliant. Christy, one for you, if I may. When should we be considering implementing the new best practice guidance from PASA? This particular scheme says we've just revised our plan. Should we redo it now or wait until next year?
So I think the fundamental point around this is to be helpful and to really help schemes. There is a regulatory requirement. So I'd say number one, I would like all schemes to take a checkpoint and just check that they are in line with the regulations, that they are understanding what the expectations are from TPR, and they are working towards meeting those. I would expect if you've already done a plan, you're probably well on your way to at least having a really good view on what your data is and having those actions in place. And what we're releasing today from PASA is to be helpful and to really aid that. So I do think it would be really great for schemes to take some time now and just reflect on the guidance that's come out from the regulator and then from us, from PASA, and see if it can be helpful to you. I'm not looking for schemes to emerge, quickly change their priorities and implement exactly what we're publishing today, but certainly for it to be helpful and to guide schemes. So take a reflection. Are you on the way to meeting what we're doing, and is what we've released helpful? Or do you think you need to take some quick action? And if so, look at how you can take that within a reasonable time frame.
Perfect. I think that's the message that I've taken away in terms of, you're right. I mean, across some of my schemes, I've definitely got data improvement plans in place, but I think it's a really sensible time to just stop, take check. Are those plans in line with these new expectations? Do they need amending, or are we good to just keep running on, sort of thing? I mean, having a scheme in place, I can, brilliant. Well done. You've got a project plan in place, but take time, touch base, think about it, and just check that it is still fit for requirements. Yo-Yo, if I may, one for you about how the regulator are going to police data quality guidance going forward. You made reference to being ready to demonstrate how you manage the data and meet the requirements. This particular question came in around, to my point about talking to sponsors about costs, and that some of the schemes just either can't afford it or aren't willing to do invest the costs that it would take to get data quality up to date. So how will TPR be policing this in terms of, you know, if trustees are trying to have that conversation doing best on all reasonable endeavours, or, you know, what is the expectation of demonstrating compliance?
Thank you, Amanda. So as we said, what's important is we need to see that the scheme, the trustees and the scheme managers, they do pay attention to the scheme data, truly assessing the data quality. As we said, as they're calling out, they need to take an active role in data management controls. When it's coming into the work itself, we do recognize that schemes may need to take in a phased approach or prioritize certain objectives if there is a lot of work required. We have recognized this in our guidance, and we have put in some consideration points that schemes can have when they're considering the prioritized data. But just calling out that, for example, schemes should prioritize the data cleansing that will have the greatest effect on the member benefits, and that most impacting your core schemes activities. And so also is linked into, you know, the schemes, your schemes strategy as overall as well.
So is there an argument there, Yo-Yo, for proportionality? So, for example, you know, TPR are not expecting schemes to spend, you know, £15,000 on automating calculations for one member, but they might ask you to spend £10,000 on, you know, an exercise that cleanses, you know, scheme salaries or GMP or those sorts of things. It's about proportionality and what is going to have the best impact for member outcomes.
Exactly. That's all. Like I said, taking active considerations, have a rationales behind your decision making, using your risk registers, capture your data issues, and make sure that you document your decisions around it, reasonable rationales. That is demonstrating you are thinking about it and putting plan in place to do the work.
Fantastic. Christy, one for you, if I may, just regarding the new material that PASA have put out. I'll read this out as it is, because I think it's a helpful question. So it says, many clients have been provided with a common data report, a scheme-specific report, find data report, view data report, each calling out issues, recommendations, fixes, and timelines. The data improvement plan also intends to set this information out in a fifth document for clients. The first four could now become a document to highlight the issues and the DIP used to show measured progress rather than repeating the progress across all five. Is that how you see these 5 client comms supporting each other rather than repeating each other? So how do we avoid inefficiencies and duplications?
So I think there's probably 2 points here. It's one, acknowledging the multiple different types of reports that schemes are seeing, and 2, kind of how do we make sure that we don't add more burden to that? So I think all of those different reports are common, particularly as we've got the ongoing annual process around data scoring, and then this particular need around dashboard readiness. One of the things I would really encourage all trustees to do when working with their providers is to understand how data has an oversight across all of these layers and all of these lenses, because if you focus very much so on one improvement report at a time, you could end up doing multiple data cleanse activities and repeatedly doing lots of work that overlaps where there's inefficiencies in the way that you're improving your data. So yes, it's good to look at it through different lenses and different purposes and have reporting that enables you to do that, but having an oversight around overall your data quality across all of the lenses and objectives that you have, and how you will improve data in an efficient way across all of those is going to be really important from an administration perspective, a cost perspective, and your members if they see any changes to that data. So oversight is really important. And what the data improvement plan is trying to do is take it away from, we've got some issues, we need to do something about that, into this is what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, and how we can measure that we've actually done that and our data has improved. And that step is really important. If you keep seeing data issues come through in your reports every year, it might be because the action that's taking isn't quite closing that gap, isn't quite turning off the tap of data issues, and isn't addressing the fundamental point that is leading to the data error coming through. So it is trying to bring it away from, we know there's an issue, to what are we going to do about that. I would also encourage schemes to use the plan how it works best for you. So if it is best to bring it all together into the plan and highlight all of the issues and bring them together, great, use it for that. That's a really great way of bringing things together. If it's easy for you to refer to different reports, so not to duplicate work, but clearly define what actions are going to take, then use it in that way as well. So I'd say really make sure you're using it as most effective for you, but do try to have that oversight and then bring it to that, as Amanda said, that's so what are we doing to improve that, and how are we genuinely measuring success?
Fantastic. And along that lines of efficiencies and avoiding duplication, Yo-Yo, an interesting one that's come in here, which I think tackles the sort of proportionality in the small schemes piece as well. There are situations where sometimes administrators have established data improvement plans and priorities that cover several schemes because of shared trends or because of some sizes of the schemes. How do TPR and Christy, also PASA, envisage this aligning with data improvement plans of individual schemes or trustees, particularly when their priorities might not be the same? So it's an interesting one. So if you've got a TPA who said, across these schemes, we're going to do this work together because, it's much more efficient for us as the administrator to tackle it across schemes, but actually your priority might be something else and the TPA is doing this. How does the trustee manage or navigate that pull of importance, for want of a better word?
I think this is a really interesting suggestions and questions in terms of how TPA is working with multiple schemes and then where the trustees' decisions kick in. From regulator perspective, I would suggest that discussions with, or maybe even roundtable discussions to see where the efficiencies and agreement can be reached among different schemes, especially if the scenario is TPA identify commonalities within the schemes that can be combined work to do. In our prioritizations, we did calling out that there's some quick wins can be considered. So there again is linked back into balance of the proportionalities, timescales, and the cost considerations, where if those quick wins opportunities presented, whether it's worth to do it. But I do encourage a joint discussions to get in that agreement.
It's back to that point of getting the administrator around the table, isn't it, and having the conversations and having that conversation with them, saying, well, actually, appreciate this is your priorities from the administrator, but from a trustee perspective, our priorities are this, and how do we build that into the overall journey plan for that works for both of us, and is pragmatic and cost effective, to go forward, and documenting that. And I think that's the thing that's really resonated from me is your comments on being able to demonstrate. So it's documenting those discussions, making sure that it's clear and easy for you as a trustee to be able to say, look, Mr. Regulator, here's all the great work that we've done. Here's all the things that we're doing. Yeah, we're not perfect, but actually this is what we're doing, and this is how we're getting there, and these are the conversations that we've been had. So it's not, willful neglect to the topic. It's conscious decisions to prioritize certain things at certain times. And on that point of prioritization, there's an interesting thing coming here, because obviously one of the amendments to the common data pieces, not just holding postal addresses, holding other ways of communicating with people. So there's a scheme here who said, we do not currently hold email addresses for members. It's a conscious decision, as we don't currently use them, over concerns over comms not being received or read, and also around data security, and we would never send non-password protected information. Is it worth us doing a data gathering exercise if it's unlikely we'll use it, and it's just another data item to keep clean and keep up to date? So in other words, is it a compulsory that schemes should, or is it a schemes should consider, and would the regulator be willing for schemes to say, actually, we've made a conscious decision not to hold email addresses in this scenario?
That's very good questions. So just to clarify, when we say updating that contact details, it doesn't mean that the schemes have to hold in all the details. We said it's one set, at least one set of the contact details. Within our guidance, the way that we update it is we not just list the data items we identified, we also providing the reasons why we think that data items is required for schemes to run, which help schemes to make decisions in what set of the data or what data items you need to hold. So for this particular scheme, it's examples. If from scheme's perspective, you're already holding one set of contact details for the member that is effective, that you are maintaining on that, and you feel that fits your scheme's purpose and need, then you may not need to holding other contact details. However, for other schemes, we know, for example, the schemes that using member portals or the schemes that in scope for dashboards, we know that personal phone numbers will be one of the verified data items. That's why we updated our guidance to incorporate those data items to enable schemes to have a record of them, really thinking what is the contact details that my scheme need for my member, and therefore I need to maintain them and regularly reviewing them.
It's about, again, about having that conversation about your scheme. What is relevant to my scheme? What is important for my scheme? What matters to me and my scheme, and how are we doing it? And documenting that decision so you can demonstrate that going forward. Christy, a very interesting one that's come in for you from a PASA perspective. And, you know, I touched on it in my outro around how technology coming in and new AI and portals and dashboards and apps and modelers and everything else that people, the administrators are developing out there. At PASA, have we had instances where the adoption of new technology has been hindered due to poor quality data? And if so, could the data quality group consider sharing some examples? So is this something we've come across in our data work in terms of case studies where actually we can evidence that, you know, poor data has hindered the rollout of technology?
Yeah, absolutely. And probably something we can take away around, can we share something more formally for as out of interest for people? But there are lots of examples of where data quality hinders the work that is trying to be done from a technology perspective. So a couple to pull out. So one, data simplification. I've seen and repeated schemes where the way that data is held is quite complex. Legacy systems, multiple different tranches have been set up that are the same thing but described slightly differently, and you end up with far more benefit tranches than you actually need. And by having so many benefit tranches, that has really impacted how they can put automation in place for retirement calculations, for pension increases, for death cases. So I've seen that just holding data on different screens in different ways with slightly different titles has really hindered how many members within that scheme can be able to access automation. That then limits, automation then limits how quickly they can get access to information about their benefits, but also any kind of self-service on portals. So we're starting to see lots of schemes try to embrace self-service. It's a great journey for members, can have frictionless journeys to get through to retirement cases or change their benefits as they need to quickly, but without the data held in a certain defined way, that really restricts it. The other example I've seen is looking at dashboards. So the vast majority of schemes that will struggle with being able to have that immediate access to dashboards is due to data quality, both in terms of matching, so having the information to be able to find people's records straight away, but then around having the values immediately available. And that's because some of the data is held on paper files somewhere, so they're not able to access that quickly, or they're not able to input automation quite so quickly because of the way it's stored. So I think we really are starting to see, if we try to embrace technology, the data going into that as a real hindrance for it. We've just released some guidance around AI, and the fundamental point underneath that is the AI will only be as good as the data that goes into that. So the importance of data accuracy, but wider data as well, so collection of operational data, how members are behaving so you can engage with them. That's really important if we want to think about AI within pensions.
I agree, and I think across my portfolio, you know, when we've looked to roll out, you know, member portals, member webs, member modelers, actually, data is really key there, because there, you know, you have to ask yourself as trustee, can I roll this out to all members, or am I only rolling out to the members that have got the right data? And is the member journey, the member experience, the same across the whole of the scheme? And you know, it's a really challenging question to say, actually, how do I get it to the point where it's a fair and an accurate and the same journey for everybody? Yo-Yo, one for you that's come in around, you touched right at the very beginning around accuracy versus presence. Does the regulator have a view on what schemes should be doing in relation to looking at accuracy rather than presence?
Thank you, Amanda. I think Christy also covered this when she's talking about the data dimensions and what accuracy means. So basically, you have the data there that's present, but if that data is correct, that is linking to the accuracy. Here, as we said, the accuracy means that the data should reflect the reality. And from the moment it's collected and stay accurate over the time. So for example, schemes should checking the data held against that member reflecting the reality at a reasonable level. A simple example could be confirming the date of birth against the birth certificate. That is checking the accuracy. But there are some informations are not as static as the date of birth. So schemes should have a process in place to capture this updated informations. And also, schemes may identify inaccurate data when using the data. So as Christy just mentioned, when you doing some technology implications, you might find that the data is inaccurate after you automate it, or maybe you sending out your emails, it's undelivered emails or undelivered mails that indicates that there is inaccurate data. So there are other works around, not just assessing the accuracy, but also ongoing maintaining the accuracy over the time. And I also just want to calling out that both accuracy and presence are just two characters among the 6 dimensions that just been calling out. And the data quality should be assessed in a rounded way. So it's not just it's accurate, but also rounded. Is that valid format? Is that timely? Is that unique? Or thinking about it in a rounded way?
Fantastic. I'm very conscious of time, so I'm just going to take one last question, which hopefully will encourage a couple of questions. And apologies if we haven't got to your question today. We will respond to all the questions in due course. But there's been a theme of questions coming in around challenges to doing this as a trustee, cost challenges, resource challenges, those sorts of things. And the question I'm going to take is, in your role as a professional trustee, what do you think are the biggest challenges for trustees in meeting these data qualities? And I think the comments and some of the questions that come in have touched on all of those. It's resource and capacity. It's, does your administrator have the resource, the ability, and the time to do what you want to do in the time you want to do it? And then it's costs. Particularly for smaller schemes, is the cost burden of this work going to be significant? Are you going to be able to get the sponsor on board to say, actually, these are the priorities? And I think there's 2 ways to tackle it. And I think, we've touched on it a number of times in terms of proportionality and pragmatism. It's about sitting down, working out everything you want to do, and then work out what are the most important things. What are the priorities? What are the absolute must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves? And what are the maybe if in a dream world, if we can get everything. And in terms of conversations with sponsors and conversations that I have a number of small schemes across my portfolio. The conversation stems around, what is the cost of not doing it? What is the risk of non-compliance with data? What is the risk to you for not updating your accurate data? And those risks are, incorrectly paid benefits, complaints, the ombudsman getting involved, legal costs, challenges. Potentially the costs of having bad data are significantly more expensive than the costs of having good data. And I think, we touched on it earlier in terms of, proportionality and prioritizing. I think if you have that conversation and sit and you take your journey plan down and take it step by step, the earlier you can get your administrator involved, usually the most cost efficient it is, because you can build, and to the point earlier about administrators doing things across multiple schemes, you can build it on that. So get your administrator in early, start having those conversations, start thinking about data alongside, funding code work, alongside ESOC and order, alongside, everything else that you're doing, and just try and be open and honest and practical. We've got 2 minutes left, so I just thought I'd give Yo-Yo, Christy, the opportunity for any closing comments that you wanted to make. Yo-Yo, anything else that you wanted to add?
I think it's a really active conversations today here, with lots of thoughts, and clearly we can see the industries and pension schemes are doing the data, but this is more about our guidance is about supporting the schemes to managing your data in a better way. So please do read our guidance, read our market oversight reports that we published yesterday, and then yeah, continue working on your data.
Fantastic. And Christy, any closing comments from you?
Mine is just look out very, very shortly after this guidance, this webinar's finished, those 2 guidances will be published. So hopefully they're extremely helpful to everybody. We love to take feedback at Data Working Group. So any feedback at all, please do reach out to us because we are here to support the industry.
Fantastic. And that leaves me to say thank you everybody for attending. I hope you found this helpful and enjoy your data journeys. Thanks all.